Good afternoon, everyone, and this is Lord Captain Commander Dunn speaking about House of the Dragon, Episode 7, Driftmark. Quite excited to talk about this with you guys, since it's going to be rather interesting to discuss the perspectives on the show and the characters within. Anyway, allow me to start bringing in my guests, starting off with our good friend, the Belarioft Curmudgeon.
Dracoris, indeed. Can you hear me okay? Because I don't see my microphone.
You're a little bit echoey, but you're fine. And please welcome Codex.
Not this day. This is a good episode.
I need to mute myself so I can look for my mic.
Fair enough.
Indeed. Alrighty. Well, So, good news and bad news. The Amazon is decided to keep blocking my stuff, so I need to figure out ways around their copyright strike. Copyright stuff. So, yeah, that's frustrating. But anyway, so overall thoughts on the episode before we get into it.
I would say really solid. Probably a solid 7.
I'd say about out of 7 as well.
Yeah.
Well, I don't see my microphone, but it must be around here somewhere because you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see. Maybe it'll turn off, but it exists anyway. So I was going to say I'm going to give this a 9, but now it's gone down to 8 or even 7.5 because there are big problems with the ending. So, well, fairly big. Not quite so big as the Kristen Cole problems, but fairly big. Well, depends. I mean, maybe comparably big. I don't know. Anyway.
It'll very much depend.
Sorry?
It'll very much depend on what happens, but yeah, this is a be vigilant of honeypotting is what I would say regarding this episode. It's like, just because this is interesting doesn't mean it's not going to come back to be bad later.
Yep.
That's my perspective on it, at least.
Yeah. We'll have to see what happens. Yeah, because there are all sorts of things. We'll get into Lanor eventually, but there'll be all sorts of things to talk about that. There'll be things about how are things heading towards. We know where things are heading towards, and so who's to blame for the way things are heading? And there's a whole lot of inference that can be done in terms of characters' motivations and intentions and stuff, because we're not told very much about people, why people are motivated to do this or that.
I would agree.
So, yeah, and it's hard to tell sometimes if if a subject, for example, the prophecy, if the prophecy isn't being mentioned, does that mean that people aren't? Does that mean that Rhaenyra and Viserys aren't aware of it, or does it mean that it isn't coming up in the story at the moment explicitly? So we don't know.
By aware, do you mean that it's important to them? Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, is it a motivating factor behind all this other stuff? And that's where we get into inference and all that. And I think a certain amount of inference is sort of necessary with this show because there's so much that's not
Mm-hmm.
spelled out. But then you have to be aware that it is inference. So.
Yeah.
Is anybody in the chat yet? I don't see any comments. Not yet. Oh well, they'll turn up.
Mm-hmm.
Nope. Currently, nobody's watching, but I'm just keeping an eye on it. But maybe things will kind of slowly.
Yeah, maybe we'll turn up. People will turn up. Let's see. I know Trip Lady said she couldn't make it. Becca Lady said kind of late in the day that she couldn't make it. I haven't heard about Aspiring Chap, whether he can make it or not.
Probably not. He's either in class S or working, probably the former.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm interested to talk about, I think the major things, like a lot of this is, the irritating part of this is kind of the lighting issue.
Yeah.
There is
season 8, and it's a problem here.
Yeah, there's some bad lighting in this episode, specifically around here.
Yeah, it didn't really bother me that much, but yeah.
It is very frustrating though. You should not have to adjust your tints to watch an Emmy level show.
Yeah, I mean, at least in this case, all that's happening is they're walking on the beach. It's not. Whereas in The Long Night, there's actual action going on, and you can't see the action. This time, it's mostly about what they're saying, so it's a little bit less bad. Also, it's sort of weird though because back in the day, the Dragon Demand was talking about the whole day for night thing and how it wasn't being used on Game of Thrones. And here, if I'm not mistaken, they are using day for night, but the effect is still kind of dark.
Yeah, the effect is the same.
Yeah.
If you look at how dark it is on the screen, you can barely make out there's a giant dragon with basically what looks like cargo netting over its body to strap its saddle on.
Yeah.
Oh, is that what that is?
It at least looks like. I don't know if that's for sure cargo netting, but that looks like cargo netting. Like if you look at it, like how it's constructed, it looks like cargo netting. Probably because Vagar's too big for anything smaller or less encompassing.
Okay, yeah, this is a bit where we could use a bit more lighting for this part.
Yeah. I don't know why, but kind of the compositing on the shot of Vagar doesn't quite look right for some reason. Maybe it's because it's a different version. Yeah, it's just something weird.
The Valyrian is cool though.
This scene is very, very well put together.
I would concur.
This and for half a moment there you're sympathizing with Aemon because he's never been able to ride a dragon before. Now he has this dragon and he's getting this exhilaration but also terror and stuff. Then he turns into kind of a bleep, but hey.
Well, this entire thing has been built up. This is the issue with the show, necessarily speaking, it's the lack of build-up. But when it's there, specifically with the scene, it's 100% there. Like, you understand why he's angry, you understand why he wants the dragon, you understand how massive this ordeal is exactly. And yeah, it's just a very well put together scene.
Well, it is dark in it here, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't really lash out at them. He just kind of like mocks them, mostly because he's been mocked.
Yeah, and he there are more of them than of him.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So are we all on Eamon's side now?
I
Wow.
would say I'm at least on Amon's side in terms of he's very much outnumbered. They have acted like assholes to him in the past, and he's just kind of giving tit for tat.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much
So
everyone's been enabling to him before, I think, including Aegon, if I'm not mistaken.
oh yeah.
I know I keep saying this, but this is probably the most basis take I ever had. Exactly, that scene in particular has better fighting choreography than anything that Rings of Power has ever done. Exactly.
You will die screaming in flames just as your father did.
Oof.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Aemon is kind of only a pawn anyway. I mean, all the kids are kind of pawns in this whole thing between the grown-ups. Whoops! Is my radio too loud?
I can hear chimes, but that's it. You're fine.
Yeah, same here.
Okay. Yeah, he's being a bleep, but hey, I mean, we've all been obnoxious when we're kids. Some of us have been obnoxious as grown-ups.
Yeah, mostly as grown-ups. I was
Yeah.
a pretty boring kid, mostly because I didn't really have. I was mostly homeschooled. Got into fights a lot, but that's pretty much the extent. In I think when I was in kindergarten and first grade, when I was actually in school.
Yeah. So, Viserys.
Yeah.
Viserys. I mean, I like the actor and I like the character, but he's the chap who's to blame for all this. You need to make up your mind. He keeps Rhaenyra as his heir, but he gives the Greens and Alicent in particular free reign to undermine her and him. He lets Alicent countermand him practically, and she just gets away with it. And he doesn't. What's the point of making Rhaenyra your heir if you're not going to back her up?
I think the issue is that he's just a weak, frail man who has no backbone.
Yeah, and why did he bring Otto back? Oh, an interesting fact. In the book, he was briefly considering making Rhaenyra hand. But then that would involve... Yeah, he briefly considered it. I'm sorry if that's a spoiler, but it's a minor spoiler because he doesn't do it.
I would not say it's a spoiler.
Yeah, because he says, well... Because he figures, but that's going to inflame tensions more. It's better if she and her sons are away on Dragonstone and keep these people separate, and then they won't be fighting. Well, yeah, but you've still got the seeds of a civil war here, and that's why the Greens I put most of the blame on the Greens, even though the Blacks do bad things, because the Greens are the ones who are laying the groundwork, who are sowing the seeds of a civil war. But Viserys is ultimately responsible because he's letting them get away with this.
Yeah. So it's not a spoiler. It's not really, since it's past.
Yeah, it's not really a spoiler because he didn't even do it.
Yeah.
It's just information, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just says, it would have meant bringing the princess and her sons back to King's Landing, where more conflict would have happened. But technically, the Otto is after Otto coming back is after the funeral. They just kind of move the events forward.
Yeah, and Otto,
which is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, they move. Yeah, they changed the order of some of the events, but hey,
which is not a big deal as far as things go.
It's just for the sake of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
I do like that little scene how Damien's children just, they don't really want to talk to him, but they know that he means well and wants to get their condolences and the like, and is the eldest daughter just holding our hand saying, thanks for being there.
Oh, poor little kid.
Yeah, it was very sweet. I will admit.
Poor little kid.
Yeah.
I don't want it.
I know. We're kind of triggered by that. We're kind of triggered by that line, but within the context, it works. But we're kind of triggered. It's like I kind of forgot.
Oh no, CJ flashbacks. No.
I don't want it. Wouldn't it be a riot if he, we're actually time traveling John? He'd gone back in time and turned into this kid.
So, he was a fetus. So it's the theory.
Yeah. Oh, someone turned up. The Trip Lady. Hello.
Oh.
Hey, how's it going, Trip? Always a pleasure.
Hello.
Yeah. So with this, would you say that something that actually was interesting that I actually had pointed this out by somebody take a look at this scene via Twitter. Sometimes Twitter, even though it's a cesspool, has some interesting things. Essentially, Vaemon Velaryon is throwing shade at Rhaenyra.
Where?
Right here. So if you look at Salt courses through Velaryon blood.
Okay, so he's talking about Velaryon blood, and
ours runs thick, and he's saying,
"You're not one of us," essentially.
And then Daemon kind of chuckles in order to take the attention away from Rhaenyra.
Oh, okay, that's what that's about. Because I was wondering why the blazes he was laughing at a funeral.
That too. Yeah.
That is a possible interpretation. It isn't it's a possible interpretation. It could also be that Daemon is kind of laughing at the notion that their blood runs true, or the it must never thin. Oh yeah, that's definitely a slight. That's definitely a slight.
And ours must never thin.
Yeah, especially since Daemon's kids look very much like their mom in comparison to Rhaenyra, who era's kids who look very much like strong boys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which I guess would make it awkward if she. Well, that's back to the Lanor thing. So maybe we'll cover that later.
And then
Mm-hmm.
kind of there's a little bit where Jace looks up and notices, since I may be ascribing intentionality to it where there is none, but it is interesting to think about. Kind of just examining the subtext, though it could also be just they're just deliberately keeping it vague to make them think to allow the audience to think that they're cleverer than they actually are.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it works.
It does work, and it's kind of the theory of best to keep your mouth shut and be thought wise rather than speak. It can be outed as an idiot.
Yeah.
I do like this bit where keep Valyria. Yeah, it's just
Both fancy creatures with very long legs. What the blazes?
Aegon's thinking of swiping some of the help.
Mm-hmm.
Because they are keeping true to his character where he's a lazy, indolent lout who likes drinking and whoring.
Even though he's like, how old is he? 13?
Allow me to check that real quick.
Or is he 15 now, hopefully?
It does look like he's 15, yeah.
Yeah.
If he's 15, it's a little bit less bad, but still pretty bad.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, let me actually check. So, Aegon the Second. So, at the time of so he's born in 106, and he's 4 years older than his brother. So he's 14 or 15 at this point in time. And since 120,
Okay,
he
that
was
makes
106.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of, he's at that point where it's like boys start noticing girls.
Yeah, but you start noticing them, but you don't necessarily start hopping to the sack with them.
Well, that's the thing. This kid clearly has an overdeveloped libido.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess that is pretty clear now that you mention
Yeah. It could also be that it could also be that he's there's some other example. What are some other things that
He's a
it could
spoiled
be?
rich boy, essentially.
Yeah, spoiled rich boy, and he's probably in a very. He's very much taught. He's very much in a society that says sex with women is proof of your virility as a man. And if you can't do it, you're punts.
it. So, and he's like basically one of the more useless royals. Like I don't know who would be a really useless royal.
Prince
Joffrey.
Harry.
Prince Harry. Okay, he'll do.
Yeah.
Charles the First of England.
Yeah.
No, I mean Charles I at least did things. His only thing was that he had no diplomatic talent whatsoever.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite stories is when he tries to kidnap the Spanish princess and ends up signing an agreement to become a Catholic that he immediately reneges on and thinks about thinks of ways to try and get back at Spain for humiliating him.
That was Charles the First?
Yeah.
That must have been a lot.
Yeah. I just remember that learning about him in Lemma Thompson lectures from like 2010, 2009-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And I just found that story immensely amusing. But yeah, here we see him being dragged up by his grandfather, who clearly has a much better sense of propriety than he does, or at least how to keep the appearance of propriety.
Well, just some
Well,
of it.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
There's definitely Tywin and Tyrion vibes. Only
Mm-hmm.
Tyrion at least has some skills. Aegon is very much not. If anything, it seems as though Aemond would be a better heir than Aegon is.
Yeah,
As you
maybe.
can see
I
right
mean,
here, so go on.
no, carry on.
No,
I was just going to say maybe.
you go first. Rage for wisdom.
I don't know what I was saying. But basically, I was saying, yeah, maybe. I mean, Aemon is more. There's a bit more to him, anyway. More substance.
Agreed.
Yeah, especially when he's. How old would you say he's? What, 13, 14, give or take? In this
10.
episode specifically? Yeah, so.
He's 10.
He's 10. Okay, fair enough. Especially when he knows, like, okay, I have the biggest, oldest dragon in the family, essentially. And eventually he does lose his eye, of course, in this episode. And he says, as much as I have lost an eye, I think it's a fair exchange for basically gaining one of the more high-renowned dragons, essentially. So he's playing the political game very quickly, exactly. He understands how essentially the code of conduct, essentially, if you will, how it works exactly.
And he does get a badass looking scar.
Yeah. Although it would limit his potential as marriage, exactly.
Unless the woman finds it a turn on.
Yeah, probably.
Although there's also the question not just of the woman, though, but of the woman's parents. But they might not care. He's a prince. He might not care.
Yeah.
Especially when he has to go into, especially when he has to in a combat situation, he's going to limit his options exactly.
Yeah, they'll have to adjust. There's also, I think we see him training with Kristen Cole, and he seems to be doing well. But that's from the trailers, so can't make a whole lot of judgments yet. It does. I do like the line.
Yeah, I do
that
too.
He has. That's a cool line, and straight from the books too.
Yeah, there's a fair bit of actual book dialogue in this episode.
Yeah. So, so one thing that I did want to discuss that we were actually discussing in the Discord, and by the way, plug for the Discord. Come on and join us. We'd love to have you. We actually had a discussion about this. Is Rhaenyra, and we brought it up at the beginning. Would you say that Rhaenyra cares about the prophecy? I think it's safe to say that Viserys does. I don't think she cares or believes it's true.
Does she even know about it?
She does. She's been told about it. She's been told about it twice. But I don't believe her. I don't believe she cares about it, though.
I see no evidence that she doesn't believe in it.
Most of it's what I would say is kind of her dialogue. Everything House Targaryen possesses is because of fire. Talking about her rise to the throne. She doesn't talk about protecting the realm from anything. She just mostly talks about I, me.
Yeah. Especially how she's been conducting herself throughout the entire series, exactly.
And even her attempts at diplomacy are with her one attempt at diplomacy with Alicent is built around a self-preservation motivation.
Well, it's also the pardon me. Just a minute.
Okay.
All right, it's my.
You need to unmute yourself, Count. You muted yourself. I can't help. I can't do anything. Oh, the prophecy. Okay, so the prophecy that we're referring to is the Princess Promise prophecies. The one that says there will be a massive storm of ice that comes down from the north that will sweep the lands unless a Targaryen is on the Iron Throne. That's the prophecy that we're referring to.
Yeah, so basically the events of the Game of Thrones series, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Up until season 6, of course, but that's a different story.
Yeah, delivery. Yeah, at this point we can't say whether she, how much she cares about the prophecy or not without going into inference. We'll have to see what happens later.
Agreed.
Yeah.
That's where I am at the moment.
Well, that's kind of. So, what would be the evidence for? Would you say?
I don't think there's any evidence either way at the moment. I mean, she shows. I mean, in terms of evidence for, she does seem to take it seriously when Viserys is explaining it to her. She does seem, at that point in time when he's explaining it, she seems to be taking it seriously at that point. There's the bit where she's trying to explain her duty to Sir Criston Cole that has to do with duty and her duty to the realm. If I remember correctly, because I don't remember the wording, so the word duty might not be in there, but she could just be selfish ambition, or she could be because I have to do this for it's my duty, and what might underline that is the prophecy. And was there some other thing, or are those the only two? Yeah, there's no, but we don't get a lot of her motivations clearly stated, so it's hard to tell. So
the offer of Criston Cole. So there's actually two. They actually present both, so it's not really flipped. It's actually they just decided to do a combination of the two, where she's asking, "Hey, be with me." I have the scene pulled up. I'd like to kind of discuss that because that is interesting to kind of think about.
Or another path.
I mean, info pointer.
It'd be useful to have some. Be useful to have subtitles.
Yeah, it's auto-generated.
I am the crown. Or I will be. I may chafe at my duties. Do you think I would choose infamy in exchange for a bushel of oranges or a ship to a shy?
Yeah, she's definitely talking about duty there. She's not saying what the duty is specifically. Is it just, to provide an heir and to inherit because her father made her the heir? Is that what she means by duty? Is she thinking of the prophecy? Is she just saying this stuff, but she really only wants power? Because that would be, we'd be back to inferencing again. But the whole thing is inference. So all we can do is infer.
Exchange for a bushel of oranges or a ship to a shy. It is my duty to marry a nobleman from a great house, and Selena will make a fine husband. But my marriage does not have to be the end.
I get more of a sense of have her cake and eat it from Rhaenyra.
Yeah.
There's
Oh.
definitely something of that, but she is talking about duties. So, depending on how seriously or otherwise she means it, and maybe it could be a combination of things. Maybe it's selfishness and maybe, how confusing human and complicated human motivations can be.
Yeah. Aegon Rhaenyra, I believe that you mean the one when she's a kid, when Aegon's a baby, or are you talking about the one where Rhaenyra talks about the possible marriage of her heir to Helena?
I was just talking about the scene we just saw.
No, I mean I'm talking about Crimson Scorpio.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had to step away because I can't.
Yeah.
Fair
So I know that she says basic. What the line that she says is, "I may chafe at my duty, but I will not exchange infamy for a bushel of oranges or ship to a shy." So my thought is, and her main motivation in that scene is to say, "Yeah, I'll wed Sir Laenor, but I still want you
Well,
to be my boy toy."
which is sort of fair enough. I mean, that's what she and Raynor agreed on.
Mm.
I mean, it's not good. I mean, it's bad. I mean, thou shalt not commit adultery and all that. But
The people in Westeros don't care about the Ten Commandments. They don't even care about their own religion. Like,
well,
people,
No, they don't.
well, I mean, they think adultery is bad too. But I mean,
but they do. They just don't care.
Yeah.
well, yeah, that's like most people, well, a lot of people in the world anyway, in the real world.
So their perspective is, it is only bad if I get caught.
Well, obviously we're generalizing about millions of people here, but yes.
Well, it's like you can't throw a stick without a bunch of. It kind of seems as though like you can only name a few people in Westeros that remain faithful to their spouses.
Mm-hmm.
And in this particular case, the marriage was arranged anyway for political reasons. So
Yeah.
there's a mitigating factor there.
I can understand. Yeah. It definitely
Yeah.
wasn't because of attractive and action. And the guy is like, "I am very sorry, but I legitimately just am not attracted to you in any way, shape, or form."
Mm-hmm.
It's it's a mitigating factor, although it's not good. It's still not good, but compared with some of the stuff that gets done in the show, which we'll be talking about presently, having an affair on the side is pretty small potatoes.
I would agree with that, but it presents logistical problems later on with the succession.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, there is that problem, which is already in full. In this episode, it's already a thing.
Yeah, I guess the main thing that I'm drawing from it is that if she had picked, maybe just instead of Sir Harwin, had picked somebody on Driftmark or a dragon seed who had silver hair, or somebody from Lys, then this problem would not be happening.
Yeah, I guess one factor is that she liked Sir Harwin, and he was available. He was there, and she liked being carried by him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wildling wedding thing.
So So I guess that's why she picked him. It's not the most brilliant thing. It's not. She didn't think it through. I mean, it might have been better to just wait for Damon to turn up.
Yeah, probably.
And this would be a whole another solution to the Lanor problem later.
Yeah.
Just keep the marriage, keep Lanor there, have an affair with Damon on the side. People will probably wonder, hey, wow, her children suddenly actually look like Targaryens. What happened? But hey, there's a problems with everything.
Allison offers to have. That was Allison in the book. Yeah, that's correct. Not Otto. Boy toys. Is that what I am to you, babe?
No comment.
Browser commits genocide. Bowser, what?
What? Seriously? Wow.
What?
You're serious? You're serious? Your mother effing serious? I made the penguins cooked.
Oh, that is bad.
Yeah. He's got balls. Jesus.
Never be mean to penguins.
Well, unless there was
kill
some
him.
kind of penguins, then that's a different story.
Or if it's anything from Norm of the North.
Oh, Christ, yeah.
So, even though it's the end, should we talk about Lena or should we talk about him later?
Is there anything that you want to talk about pre-Lanor? Because I would like to somewhat discuss the Rhaenyra is a selfish person who doesn't care, and I think the main thing that you brought up was kind of Shad talking about how he prefers Alicent over Rhaenyra.
He's definitely Team Green, which because the selfish thing is more obvious in the earlier part of the story, whereas in the later part of the story, the elephant in the room here is Otto wanting his grandson on the throne. And he plotted this long before the Strong Boys came up, long before Lanor came up. So he's been plotting for a long time. And if he's not, either he's a complete idiot or he knows that trying to support an alternate heir to the throne risks causing a civil war. And that's the thing, when we talk about Rhaenyra's faults, we have to remember what I've mentioned before. The Greens are sowing the seeds for a civil war. So I may have to repeat that more than once because it's an important point to remember. Because whatever the blacks do, at least they're not trying for a civil war. They're reacting. And some of their reactions may also lead to civil wars. And some of their reactions are not good. And whether Rhaenyra is selfish or not, the point is, she's the heir.
Is there kind of the possibility that of some measure of distinction in terms of Otto just says civil war is inevitable? Inevitable due to the two heirs.
No, because he was pushing for the other heir. It's not like the other heir happened happened, and he was like, "Ooh," he wanted the other heir the whole time. Ever since Aegon the second was born, all the way back in episode 3.
Okay. I think that's a fair reading.
Yeah. So it doesn't mean Rhaenyra is perfect. Unfortunately, unfortunately, one side can be really bad, and the other side can be just kind of bad. That's one of those things that can happen. Well, they can be bad in different ways.
Yeah. I think, though, Alicent definitely seems like she is at least a more sympathetic person than Rhaenyra, because there's at least a measure of she's been trying. She feels extremely used by Rhaenyra. There's also the element of she feels like I've been trying to be the good little girl for my whole life. I've lived my faith. I've tried to do what's right, and I am extremely unhappy. And yet you get to do whatever you want. How is that fair?
Yeah, but of course, Rhaenyra doesn't do whatever she wants. She marries Laenor. She agrees to marry Laenor, so she does that at least. But yeah, there is that aspect of it where Alicent was the good girl, Rhaenyra was the bad girl. But that, that's more applicable in the first half of the season than in this half when they've grown up. Because when they grow up, Alicent becomes like this bitter, this angry, bitter woman, and Rhaenyra is sort of. I don't know. Rhaenyra's kind of.
This context. Sorry, go on.
No, carry on. I'm done.
No, it's fine.
Just that Rhaenyra is a bit of an enigma in some ways. Carry on, though.
Well, given the scene exactly, her son has literally lost an eye. Exactly, it is one of Rhaenyra's children who committed the act. So, this action specifically in the context, it does make a lot of sense.
There is one troubling thing that Rhaenyra does say in that big scene where she talks about having Aemond questioned sharply. And you're like, he's a 10-year-old kid. You don't question a 10-year-old kid sharply. Maybe she would have backed down from that, but still, no.
Maybe, I suppose.
I hope so. At least she didn't demand to be executed. It could have been worse.
That would be going too far.
But you don't. Not with a 10-year-old kid. You don't do that. 10-year-old kid. Even an obnoxious one.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm like, Aemond's obnoxiousness is less bad than Jason Aegon's obnoxiousness.
Well, because he's reacting to them, but then they were defending their cousin.
No, I mean with the pink dread thing.
Oh, the pink dread, yes. The pink dread. Yeah, I don't know if it was worse. I don't know if it's better or worse. I don't know if they're both equally bad. I don't know.
He's just throwing words at them, and he does escalate it to the point where he says you're all bastards. He should not have done that. But he only escalates as they escalate.
Well, I mean, you don't take out an eye from somebody just because they insult you.
Exactly.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Yep. I have to unfortunately agree with that. Okay, a distinction can be made between the insufficiencies, I guess, of the individuals and the inherent problems of the sides. Oh
Yeah.
God, no, no, not that goddamn pun again. God help.
Oh boy.
Not to mention that's actionable. Calling me done is actionable.
Bring it on. My mom's a lawyer. I'd win.
Bring it on. Oh, you need the llama for that one. That would take up more time.
Now that you mention it,
Sounds like a gas baby. Bring it on.
I do miss the llama though.
I do have
Yeah.
the llama. I just need to find the llama.
Oh my.
Oh yeah,
Bring it on.
We need to watch. We need to watch Emperor's New Groove. I think that'd be fun
Yeah,
to rewatch.
yeah, it's actually a good movie. Yeah,
It
surprisingly.
is so funny. So
Perfect kid,
memeable
man.
too.
Eartha Kitt. Oh,
Oh,
such a
miss her.
treasure. Yeah.
Agreed. Eartha Kitt's awesome. Her and Patrick Warburton are the funniest parts of that movie.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. I think another thing that I want to talk about is actually the conversation between Rhaenys and Corlys in particular, where it's kind of interesting that they're portraying him as really, well, I think that this actually makes a lot of sense because Rhaenys just kind of disappears from the book for quite a while, and then
Mhm.
she's abruptly Rhaenyra's a major player for Rhaenyra. So I think that making her just, I don't care, or quit talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
About this, you're the guy who's obsessed with this because you're basically a dude who pulled his house from nothing, or basically just middling to basically becoming the next Bill Gates of Westeros.
Who?
Bill Gates of Westeros.
I know, but who's the Bill Gates of Westeros? I had to step out.
Corlys Velaryon,
Oh, I guess kind of, yeah.
or the Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, insert guy who basically just became uber rich from only middling wealth.
Yeah. I mean, they were the lords of Driftmark, so they can't have been exactly poor.
Yeah, they're not, and they have been at the side of the Targaryens, but he basically just made them richer than God by himself, pretty much. I actually love how Gary from Nerdrotic calls him the Gary Stew of Westeros.
Yeah. I gave it the idea of wearing a crown a generation ago. Yeah. Anything that develops Rhaenys as a character, I'm all for. Mainly because like Eve Vest is so good at portraying her.
There's also kind of the element that it is interesting that this kind of contextualizes the notion that basically when she was talking to Rhaenyra, it was basically either a ploy or just warning her, saying, "There's no way you're actually going to be queen. Nobody's really going to like you enough to let you be queen." And
Yeah,
Rhaenyra doesn't. Go for it. Sorry.
Sorry, which is not necessarily the case. I mean, people might like her if she's likable.
But she kind of is not.
Yeah, that's the thing. She doesn't. That's the thing. I mean, she makes an effort to be likable at one or two moments, but she's not terribly likable now.
No,
I mean,
she doesn't have any people. She's not really a people person.
Yeah.
Oh, I would love to hear that. I would love to see more of that point. I love hearing various different perspectives.
Yeah, that is a distinction. I mean, because individuals can do bad things, but the side can still be the correct side, like the Allies bombing Dresden and things like that. Hello?
Oh, you could come on? Okay. Allow me to send you the link then. So, alrighty. I also think that it's interesting to say, I think that the only times Rhaenyra seems to care about it is when her dad is lecturing her about it. Other times she doesn't really care, even when she's talking to Daemon.
Are you talking about the prophecy again? Because I think we've covered that.
True. I'm just like it. Most of her talking about is she cares about power, and that's pretty much it. Like duty is only just saying, "Oh, I'm just forced to do this because my dad tells me so." I don't really actually have any like belief in this prophecy stuff.
Well, I mean, we'll have to. This is something we're going to have to see what happens.
Yeah, I'm interested to see. I would say that Viserys, he's definitely a true believer. He believes in it. With Rhaenyra, I'm like, she is mainly trying to save her own skin and indulge herself without getting caught.
Or she may have several different motives. She may have a number of different motives, and one may be uppermost or the other, depending on this or that, what mood she's in, what's happening. But of course, that's all inferential because we know so little about it.
Yeah,
which is fine.
Yeah, which kind of leads me to believe it probably shouldn't have been included unless it becomes pivotal to the plot.
Yeah, I mean, if they don't develop it later, then they might be including it. I mean, I'm wondering why they included it. Did they include it for like meta reasons? Because it sort of sets up a different story from season 8 of Game of Thrones, or are they going to will it actually play a role in motivating Rhaenyra down the line?
Yeah,
that's what I'm wondering. One or the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we have a guest in the back room. Please welcome Crimson Scorpio.
Thank you for having me. You do me an egg.
Of course.
Well, thank you for having me.
So, what was the point? What was the point that you wished to make, Mr. Scorpio?
So, like, please never be so formal with me. But
sure.
So, like, I mean, this goes kind of. All right, we can take this from the top, right? So, like. I wrote a whole freaking like essay on this on Reddit too. Like, I posted it. So, political power, right? Does political power have to justify itself?
How do you mean exactly?
Does it have to be justified by what we might call a super sovereign principle? Does it have to be justified before something? To use a somewhat famous and specifically non-Western example, right? In Chinese history, we have something called the mandate of heaven, right? There's this idea that the political sovereign has there's something above the political sovereign that sort of mandates the rule, but also that they are accountable to, right? This idea that sovereignty, power, has to justify itself before some sort of super sovereign principle, right? In modern societies, the idea is that the political sovereign is justified by theoretically the will of the people, and we're not gonna say anything else about that, right?
Just the voting system picks the.
Not just the voting not just the voting system. The idea that power is derived from the consent of the governed. This is more social contract, right?
He's talking about the principles on which it rests, not the specific system, if I understand correctly.
It's not about the system. Like you can justify, like in the Middle Ages, right? To use the Middle Age example, right? Power is justified before God, which is instantiated temporally in the form of the church, right? This is what excommunication is about in the Middle Ages. The Pope part of the problem with excommunication is that it releases your subjects' necessity to obey you, right? It's not just theological, and there's a reason for that. Because if you extrapolate this to its most extreme form, right, what we're saying is that if political order or political sovereignty is not, for lack of a better term, virtuous, right, you're no longer bound to obey it. You don't have to obey it at all. It's no longer a legitimate political order. And you can say that you don't, cynically, in a Machiavellian sense, we can say that doesn't always shake out, right? But if you're serious about this, you actually should be able to understand that this is very important in how we formulate society. Because if we don't say that there's something greater than the sovereign or the king, you don't have a rational basis for opposing the king. Or at least I can't see how you do. And if you disagree with this, please say so.
No, I think that makes sense. So how would you apply it to the discussion at hand?
All right, so the issue is that Rhaenyra's faction, the inherent justification for their faction is that the sovereign does not need to justify themselves before anything. And that is such a dangerous and inherently tyrannical proposition that I'm prepared to accept anything that is not that. Okay, and I don't want to spoil anything too much, but their actions prove it going forward. And they specifically cite this. This is more of a minor thing down the line, so I don't think it's too much of a spoiler. But they do say, they say, make it very clear, they are not fighting for a change of the law. They're fighting for a total abrogation of the principle of law by saying that what the king says always goes. And I would argue further that Rhaenyra is a different kind of case, but Daemon Targaryen is sort of like the picture of this, right? He's the unconstrained man, and he's actually very impressive. He is. He's very impressive. But he is the unconstrained man. You can see where this goes, because these principles don't just apply to systems of government, they apply to human beings, they apply to everyone down the chain. It is this unconstrained humanity problem. If the blacks were to say, for example, because a lot of times what you'll hear in arguments against this is that that the king is the law, which is just nonsense. Okay, the king is trusted to be. Okay, let's rephrase this. The sovereign, the political sovereign, is trusted to be to be what we might call the arbiter of the law, because if we couldn't change laws, we'd be doomed as a species and as a society, right? So we trust our political sovereigns to course correct, but the course has to have a destination, right? It can't just be the will of the sovereign is uber alles. We first of all, the ascension of human will over things like human reason is a dangerous proposition in and of itself. And second of all, we have a political ideology that says have the will of the sovereign be paramount over any other thing, and it's not called monarchy. It's called fascism. That's what fascism is about. That's why the movie is called Triumph of the Will, right? And again, I don't think that Rhaenyra is like this psychotic genocidal maniac. I don't. But this is how you get there. When you subordinate all other things to will. When we can see this further with her relationship with the truth, right? Because, like, she doesn't believe she's beholden to the truth. She doesn't believe that she's beholden, and like her whole faction arguably believes that. Daemon a little less so. The redeeming thing about Daemon is that he has like a really, really weird form of integrity. And I don't like Daemon. I think Daemon is arguably the worst or the second worst person in this story. Much worse than Rhaenyra.
Yeah, he's pretty bad.
Yeah, he's really bad. He's really, really bad. I was actually really against him killing Rhea for other reasons. I think that was a bit of mistake on their part. But you know, sorry, what was I saying? So like, if the sovereign isn't beholden to the truth, right? Like then, like what can't, like if you permit the sovereign to lie, right? Where can you draw the line? What can you do? What do you have to stand on? Nothing is, everything is permitted if you allow that.
Okay, so applying this to the story,
Sure.
The question having to do with the succession, and the problem being that it doesn't seem like there was any set system of succession for the Targaryens
Okay.
up to this point, and the Council of 101. That's not really. Is that really legally binding? Is that what produces the wall?
Okay, so this is fair. This is the one that comes. Like I mentioned, there were other arguments that come up there. The other argument is that like there is no set succession for the dynasty, right? And we also don't know about Targaryen/Valyrian customs, which is a whole other can of worms about like how they're foreign and that kind of stuff, right? Which for the record I don't buy. Like if something being foreign is bad, then I would be against Stannis, and I'm not against Stannis.
Yeah, right? And women also that women can inherit.
They can. I'm not saying that.
As lords and stuff, like Lady Weber and things like that.
Like Rhea, what was right?
Yeah.
Right. So the issue here is not that. Again, the sovereign can. We trust inherently the sovereign to amend the law, right? We have to, because or if we want to go full libertarian, we like totally give that power to ourselves, right? Let's assume we're not doing that, right? We trust the sovereign. We can trust Viserys. You know, not that he's the most trustworthy guy because he's just ragingly incompetent, but we can trust Viserys to act in such a way to amend the law to use the most high-minded terms, to achieve a better virtue, right? To guide us more toward truth, right? The problem is that that's not the principle the blacks, or Rhaenyra, or however you want to phrase it, are operating on. They're not saying that like for example, they're not saying that Viserys' decision is a better decision because it promotes equality or anything like that, right? But they're lying on, what the principle they're lying on is that the king can say anything, you have to obey it. That's their ruling principle. For example, let's turn this on its head a little bit, okay? In the Anarchy, and I just watched, and I recently watched a very good like little web series on the whole Anarchy, which is the historical conflict that this is sort of based on, right? When Henry I is making everyone swear to his daughter Empress Matilda, right? He gives two major justifications. The first is that because of who her mother is, Matilda is also a descendant. She's also like Scottish, so she represents a full union of the Norman, Anglo-Saxon, and Celtic bloodlines of Britain, which is just kind of cool, right? And second, he says that like we're doing this, you and me and my parents, because this guarantees safety and stability for the realm. So that way we're very clear and we're not going to mess this up. You could say that that's cynical, but like that's a justification. That's something. That's not nothing. That's not you have to do what I say or everything's, or you just die, right? My point here is that you can draw a straight, like once you permit the king to be his own justification, or the monarch, or the queen, or the sovereign, because again, this is not limited to monarchies. I get very frustrated when people talk about the Song of Ice and Fire and the related stuff like it's some kind of condemnation of feudalism. It's not. It's like if we're supposed to read this story and go, these people are stupid for living in the system, like are you telling me that political corruption can occur in like modern democracies? Like, are we living on the same planet? So the issue, so again, the issue is that once you permit this, once the king becomes his own justification, you're off the rails, and you're hurtling toward tyranny. You can draw a straight, and I would argue very strongly that you can draw a straight line from Valyria. But like if we're looking at the Targaryen dynasty from Jaehaerys, the best king they had, to Aerys the second. You can draw a straight line from from Jaehaerys' doctrine of exceptionalism, which is a lore thing, so I don't, I know some people don't all know that. But right from Jaehaerys to Aerys the second's, burning people alive without trial, right? You can draw a straight line with it, and on that continuum lies Rhaenyra and her faction. Okay, the Greens, and I have a huge problem with the dance because I think the Greens are shit characters. Okay, and not in like the way like the Lannisters are shit people, like they're actually shit characters, and I think they're doing a lot of work in the show to make them at least interesting in some way.
Yeah,
I don't care how bad the Greens are. They're not that, because when the Greens say, like, I can go to the Greens, like they give me something. They give me something to work with. Like with the Blacks, I have nothing to work with. So that's the truncated version of the argument.
Okay.
Like deeper, more deeper, like this attitude comes from Valyria, right? Like this idea that the Valyrians are above the gods, right? And Valyria is not like this great place. Valyria was like hell spawned and hell consumed. It was this place of dark magic and evil experiments and brutal slavery and blood sacrifice and all this terrible stuff. It's not a good place. It's not good, like, for the Targaryen dynasty to be more like Valyria. They should be less like Valyria. And they believe that because they can ride dragons and because they look sexy, they are above the laws of other men. This is why I referenced the doctrine of absolutism. That doctrine is heinous. It's evil to say that. It's evil to put yourself above virtue. So, I know, let me be very clear. I know the Greens are mostly hypocrites. I know that.
Yeah, the Greens are evil. Evil in a lot of cases.
I said Daemon is the second worst person in the story. Aemond is the worst person in this story. He's awful.
Interesting. I would have said Otto was, at this point, was worse.
I don't know that I can. Like, someone made a really good post. Someone made a really, really good post the other day about how what Otto's doing is what Otto originally was doing in getting Alicent was he was just doing business as usual, right? He was just sending his daughter to go be with the king, and you can make the case that that's abusive of Alicent in some way, and that I'd probably agree with you in a lot of ways, right? But the problem is that once he does that, he thinks the rules as the rules would say that he's won, he's moved his knight to L5 or whatever. I don't know. I like chess, but I don't actually know the formal stuff about it. And he's got things in checkmate. It's fine. And then instead, what happens is Viserys flips the table, and it's like, and he's now scrambling to fix the broken, to not to fix, but to course correct after the rules are effectively broken.
A band-aid, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Like the Greens, the Greens are like flying blind because like they don't know what the Targaryens, like they don't know what Viserys is going to do, and I'm trying not, again, not to spoil, but what's going to occur what should occur if the creators have any spine in the next couple episodes only reinforces most of his fears and all of my points.
I mean, ultimately, the blame goes to Viserys, even though he's not a terrible person. But ultimately, he's the one who's responsible for this because he needed to pick one or the other. And yeah, I know that's putting it on Viserys, but
yeah, I think we should avoid let's not abrogate the moral agency of the people involved here. I can't go that far. I do agree that he's kind of bad. He's kind of shitty. I do agree with that.
Because he put them in this situation where he's like where he needs to support one or the other side. They have agency. They all have agency, but he's the one who, in their theory, is responsible.
I mean, yes. I mean, he was also pointing out that he enables a lot of what Rhaenyra gets away with because he does enable her. And they're like in the next episode or so, something should happen. And I know they made him cut his hand earlier in the series, but he doesn't cut his hand until he does a very specific thing. Until he does a very, very specific thing in the story, and that matters. It matters a lot that when he cuts his hand, that matters a lot. So, that's that.
Yeah, because he's enabling Rhaenyra, but then he's also enabling Alicent.
Oh, don't get me wrong. He is not taking control of the situation the way he should. Like if he came out and went to a Great Council, or even if he didn't go to a Great Council, but he actually tried to make some solid cases for why Rhaenyra should inherit. Because like I'm saying with the Greens, like literally anything is better than what the Blacks are proposing, including any good justification, even like half decent justification for Rhaenyra. Like if Viserys came out and said, "I'm the king, and you should trust that I'm acting for the good of the realm," right? That's really tenuous, but that's something. That's something. It's not nothing. Like I'm looking for anything here. Like the Blacks can't give me anything. And also, Daemon is just really shitty. Like I do think he's terrible, like a vile human being.
I would agree, especially considering what he does later.
I'm not even sure how politically or philosophically aware these people are either.
Like an idea is not necessarily fully. Like I'm not accusing Daemon or Rhaenyra of like being like true fascists in the sense that like they're actually like thinking about concepts like the human will and sovereignty and things like that. They're not doing that. Like they're acting in their own self-interest. Like it's understandable what, especially Rhaenyra. Daemon's a harder guy to read. But Rhaenyra's not thinking like I'm like the god. I'm like God incarnated in flesh. That's implicit in I know that's kind of there in the Targaryens, but she's not like thinking that like that in philosophical terms. She's just trying to get what she wants, and yes, she thinks she's entitled to it. Does she conceive it as a duty? Kind of. She thinks she has to dump in the sense that she knows that she has to jump through some hoops to get what she wants. She probably conceives of that as a duty. Not in the sense that like the Starks do, or like Stannis does, right? Like where rulership is like this inherently deep responsibility. And again, like as things develop, it's understandable why she kind of moves away from that, so to say. But this is, this is the issue. Like, I can't get around this problem.
Mm-hmm.
Apologize. I apologize. I just kind of like,
You're fine.
over the dream.
No, these are really interesting
right.
questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't really get that there are any noble or altruistic motives from Rhaenyra.
There are no issues. Like, you could say that there are no issues that are. Well, she cares about her kids. Let's be fair here. Like, she's not like this. She's not like this psychotically evil person. Right? She is trying to do right by her kids, as far as she can tell. Right? But of course, you can say the same about Alicent. But there's no like.
Cersei.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
She's not like Cersei, for example.
No, that like you can actually like. Alicent and Rhaenyra are like if you took Cersei and Daenerys and like put them in a blender and then like you kind of like split them in half, but you left behind all like the really really bad shit between the two of them, like the really really bad shit.
You'd have to leave behind some of the good stuff too, because so far as I know, neither Rhaenyra nor Alicent has taken any interest in abolishing slavery or particularly in helping the small folk in any way. So, so you have to take aside some of the good too, at least in the case of Daenerys. And in case of Cersei, they don't get as good lines as she does. That's all I can say in favor of Cersei.
They don't have Lena Headey acting for them. And
well,
for that, they're garbage characters.
Well, they also don't have the writing of all the stuff in Feast for Crows that Cersei gets to say.
Or think. Like, oh man.
Or think, yeah.
Yes, it's when a lot of the stuff that she thinks is freaking hilarious.
It's a lot of people say that like and I've read it and I think it is a good read. Like a lot of people say like she's the best POV because she's absolutely hilarious. She is.
Yeah, she's a riot.
Yeah, it's just like her bias and the fact that she's so objectively wrong is so funny.
And kind of clueless too. I mean, not clueless, but I mean, not self-reflective.
Ignorant.
Yeah, I mean, like this is the thing. Like only Jamie. It's interesting to note that she gets that from her dad, right? Like Jamie is kind of self-aware. And Tyrion is arguably a little more self-aware. He's arguably too self-aware because he's too down on himself for things.
Mm-hmm.
But like Tywin, like one of the more interesting things about Tywin is like how much of his own Kool-Aid he drinks, right?
Yeah.
Because like Tywin, like you know the line. Tywin's not as smart as he wants other people to think he is. That's actually the point of his character. He's overrated in universe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and some of the fans will just take that at face value.
Yes, I mean, like Lannister apologies, like people like I get really frustrated with this because people talk about how like the Song of Ice and Fire, right, is like this anti-war series, right, and it's like George R. R. Martin has like crafted the most justified dynastic conflict ever.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Lannisters are like, I think I've mentioned this before. Lannisters are shit people and shit rulers, right? Like let's do the fantasy equivalent of invoking Godwin's Law and mention Tolkien for a second. Like Sauron is really, really evil.
Yeah.
Like Sauron is like spectacularly evil. He's also just like really good at what he does. The Lannisters aren't.
Sauron is at least a measurably competent administrator, as described in Return of the King, specifically in the outside of POV narration that Tolkien does.
Yeah, he's also just like really competent in general, right? Like he's like what he does to Numenor, is like bananas. Like the Palabeth is like insane, and he just does it. Like let's take this. Does anyone appreciate this? Morgoth, Melkor, whatever the heck his name is, right? never needed Eru Iluvatar to actually step in to take care of him after the actual creation of I almost said Mundus. I got Elder Scrolls on the brain of the world, right?
Arda.
Arda,
Yeah.
that's the word. Arda, right? Sauron had to be more or less personally intervened by Eru, who is God, twice. At least, definitely once when when he made the world round and destroyed Numenor, and also it's sort of implied when the ring was finally destroyed.
So
That's how confident Sauron is.
I love how we're comparing Sauron favorably to the Lannisters. Even though I agree, I do think it's entertaining.
Well, let's actually really think. Well, since we're I know I talked about like truth and things like that. Let's actually really think about this for a second, right? This is also like in the Silmarillion, right? What does Morgoth do during the creation of Arda, right? He tries to subvert the works of the other Ainur, the Valar, right? He tries to subvert the works of the other Valar, right? They raise mountains, he destroys them, or something like that, right? He constantly tries to subvert their creation, right? Well, human beings aren't angelic / demonic beings, so they can't like do that. Obviously, yes, we have technology and we can like move Earth around at this point, but we can't do that, right? What we can do is we can subvert the truth. What we can do is lie. What we can do is say we're the masters of, we are masters of truth, not subject to truth, or truth is our subject rather than an object that we have to like negotiate with, right? This is why Varys is a problem, right? Because he believes that he can be the master of truth, which means that he can be the master of reality, right? And it's the same thing with the Lannisters. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's the problem I have with Rhaenyra, right? It's this attempt to like I think there's a minor meme going around right now where they're mentioning that Rhaenyra is like gaslighting Alicent, or that everyone's been gaslighting Alicent, and that's kind of true. That is kind of true. Like she's trying to get everyone to live a lie. And you can say that you can claim that it's innocuous, but it's not innocuous. It's not innocuous. Like I've also mentioned this before, right? Like
she's made sacred vows, and she's
not just that. The seat of power is being inhabited on false pretense, right? I've said this before. The Rhaenyra situation is a better version of the Cersei situation, because the fact that like Joffrey is so amazingly awful, right, makes it too easy. Like, imagine for a second that Joffrey actually was a great kid. Imagine that for a second. Like, turn that on its head. Like, now we're forced to actually confront the issue of truth straight on. Thank you. Truth straight on. Like I massively prefer the Rhaenyra situation. It's like my hatred of the dance, and I do kind of hate it. Like, man, I hate it. But my hatred of the dance does not come from its like preconceived notions here. Like it's good, like story wise, that someone like, or some faction like the Black Seas, some faction trying, not consciously but like implicitly, trying to recreate the Valyrian god emperorship in Westeros. Right? It's cool. And the fact that who oppose them are like these shitbags who like actually are on the right side, as I define it, so to say, that's cool. But then what we get is like this, like the Greens are garbage, and like they're garbage in the war. Try not to spoil.
In the war.
They're awful. Like, they're so bad. They're so bad. Like, I made a joke in my massive post. Like, after the war actually begins, right? Is the most like actually prominent and recurring green Unwin Peak? Because no one else does anything.
Yeah.
I hate this. Alicent and Cole are hyped to the moon, and they don't do anything. I'm sorry, I'm spoiling everything.
Not in specifics.
Yeah. like they don't do anything. They just like they do fuck all. And then like
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
He's saying that Rainier and Alicent and Cole don't really do anything during the war.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, I guess Rhaenyra orders certain things to happen, but they're kind of like they're not.
That's not that's nothing Alicent does. No, Alicent and Cole, not Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra actually does have like things she actually does during the war that like poorly on her, but she actually is like an agent. She's an acting character right during the war. She actually has like an arc even during the war. But Cole and Alicent do not.
Yeah, I mean, Alicent, to the extent that she's got an arc, it's like more after the war. I don't even know if they call it an arc exactly.
Like denouement, whatever.
Denouement. It's not exactly an arc because it's all these characters are so sketched that I don't know if any of them has an actual arc.
Exactly. There is like the one benefit of the way the story is that like because everything is such like paper thinner, so to say, is that you have room to go deep with things. Like this is pure speculation, right? Like there's a few different ways you can take Aemond, who is the most paper thin thug character in the fucking book. I hate him. But you can take him a few different ways. One, you can play up him being loyal to his family, especially to his brother and to maybe even Helena, maybe Daryl, maybe his mom, right? You can play up his noble qualities a lot. Or what noble qualities you can sort of give him. Right? You have the space to go there with him, right?
You can also sort of say they cut his eye out, you know. You can sort of understandable that you'd resent that a bit.
No, yeah, like you can make him compelling. Like the thing is, right? Like you don't have to necessarily make a character sympathetic to be compelling, right? Like Macduff, Macduff is not as good a character as Macbeth, right? Like Macbeth is like the most evil person. I don't know if he's the most evil person. He's definitely the most evil main character Shakespeare ever made, unless you count Iago.
Or Richard III.
Oh, interesting thing. Like Macbeth can be seen as like a full upgrade on Richard III, right? He's a deeper version of Richard III.
Yeah, where Richard III is basically just I am evil.
He's so entertaining. He is so entertaining. Yeah. I really like the Henry VI plays. Actually, the first Henry. There's actually a really good version you can find on YouTube, where it's in like it's old from the 60s. It's all in like black and white. It's really cool. It's like got that like, it does that really cool thing like old fantasy dude, where like it makes like the background very like atmospheric. The thing's all like smoky, so it's very impressionistic. Or maybe that's not the right word.
My personal favorite Richard III's have been the ones that I've seen at live at Utah Shakespeare Festival, but my favorite film adaptation is The Hollow Crown.
That's fair. Like the one, like I actually like Richard III is cool. Like, what I like is that I like the preceding plays a lot too. I actually know a lot about the Wars of the Roses. I just did a whole bunch of research on it, I guess. And I like how like the Richard I like Richard Duke of York. That's a cool arc with him. I like one of the things I always really like, and like I've seen it a few times, and I think I know it's in the Hollow Crown. It's also in this other one where like they make Warwick, the Richard Neville, the Kingmaker, right? They make him really like nice to Henry VI. Like if you notice, it's really consistent. He consistently like tries to he never like badmouths him. He's never like even when Richard, his brother-in-law and his main ally, right? Even when Richard Duke of York like kind of like gets angry at Henry, he's like, no, don't be angry at him. You know that he's not trying to hurt you or anything. It's a really cool bit of like subtle characterization that he's got going on there. But also, fun fact, in the black and white version that I mentioned, right? Edward IV, right, the king, is played by Roy Dotrice, or however you pronounce his name.
Oh, Roy Dotrice. Yeah, I love Roy Dotrice. He's cool.
Yeah, he's cool. He plays Richard Duke of York's oldest son. He becomes Edward IV. So that's really cool.
So there's a tie-in.
Exactly. No, yeah. Like I don't just bring things up. I link it all back.
Hey, sounds like a plan. I like it.
It's a good. And it is like a good, compelling performance. And then, like, no, I won't go into anything else like that. But like, yeah. So we're talking about like evil characters, like Aemond, right? You can make him more sympathetic by like creating like good qualities for him, right? Like you can do that. Like, that's fine. The other thing you can kind of do is go full, again, to reference Macbeth, go full on existential crisis Macbeth mode with him, right? And you can do that, and you can actually go a bit farther even than that because no greater spoilers than this, but he falls in with a witch, with a woman who's supposedly a witch, right? And this isn't spoiler because it just says that on the page, right? It's not a surprise. You know, he falls in with a witch, and you can like do the things that they didn't do with Euron with him, where he starts like tripping balls and going crazy.
Yeah.
You could do that. I'm not saying they should do that, but they could.
I'm interested to see who they cast for Alice Rivers. Like, if they cast Elizabeth Olsen as Alice Rivers, that would be interesting. That's a rumor. It's probably not true since she's off doing Scarlet Witch stuff, even though she's dead.
Well, no one's dead in the multiverse.
No, they're not.
I mean, Alice. I mean, like, people make cracks that like Alice is apparently way older than him, so like everyone's going off about Aemon the MILF hunter, which is like, I don't know, man. Also, someone wants to spell it MELF, and I'm like, what are you doing?
I have no idea then.
Like, no, like someone like just the word or the acronym. Like, I don't know. But yeah, that's Aemon, and like the Greens, like Aegon. Like Aegon the Second is just like he's a hard guy to talk about without spoiling. Let's put it like that.
He's
Aegon. Aegon, there's not much to Aegon at this point.
Like Aegon the Second is like kind of just brought up and dismissed as this like doughy jackass, I guess is the way I want to phrase him.
Basically, he'd probably fit in a fraternity or in some of the one of the like stupider. He'd probably be one of the stupider high school students or something.
He is like a middling man, right? Like he is, like, to use the word for it, he's a very insufficient person, right? Like compare him, like Daemon. Like, to bring it back to Daemon, right? Like Daemon is interesting in that in the totality of his person, he's a very, I don't want to say admiral. Like admiral is a very tentative word to use for Batman.
He's an
not just accomplished, although he is accomplished. Like he's actual. When I say, I do mean admirable in the sense that there's something very like.
He's got charisma.
Dare I use the word exceptional about him?
Yeah, some villains are like that. Like Jadis is not to go on a tangent, but Jadis, or however her name is pronounced.
Jadis, from you're talking about the Narnia character, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, she becomes the White Witch, but her portrayal is the White Witch. She's just, whatever, but she's fine. She's fine in the White Witch, but she's brilliant in The Magician's Nephew. So Daemon is not quite on that level, but I think that's what the kind of thing that you're aiming at.
That's kind of what I'm like. It's characters like that, like Macbeth is like. I keep going back to Macbeth.
Oh yeah.
Example, like where Macbeth is like a very, very evil person, but there's a grandiosity to him that's like impossible to like not respect. Similar thing with like, this is a less harsh example because Antony isn't nearly as bad a person as Macbeth or Daemon, but in Antony and Cleopatra, similar things can be said about Antony and Cleopatra. In fact, Cleopatra is actually also a good example. Cleopatra is not really a great person, but there's something about the two of them, in fact, that makes their position, if not agreeable, appealing. Right? Also,
It's
highly recommend anyone look up Anthony and Cleopatra. Anthony and Cleopatra is fucking awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think that that's a good discussion of, I think, so I was having the perspective that Rhaenyra doesn't really care about the prophecy, that she's only really kind of telling her dad what he wants to hear, and that she just wants to be taken seriously.
Well, I mean, we'll have to see what happens later. Do they bring up the prophecy in the future or not? And if not, then I'm not sure why they brought it in apart from some meta reason. So I'm hoping that will come into it as a motivation, because if not, then they only bring it up either for meta reasons or because it's cool or whatever.
I honestly like the interpretation that she doesn't give a crap, honestly, better than I like the idea that she's actually doing this because of duty.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
yeah, the issue, like, so people take issue with the prophecy because, like one like very salient criticism is like the shrink the world criticism, right? Which I kind of agree with. Like, you can just have Aegon want to take over Westeros because he's got dragons. Like, it's not, he doesn't need this crazy justification. It also raises a lot of question marks about the whole dynasty, especially before this point, because like, what was Aegon doing, right? But more like, as I probably sort of like intimated, right? I'm not really crazy about the Targaryens in general, like for good reasons, like not because I think a lot of them are, but like in the sense that like I disagree with them. I love to hate them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So here's the issue with this. I'm very worried that they're going to use this to but to make bad things that happen to House Targaryen seem like inherently tragic, right? Which is vile. It's very like, and here's why. Here's why, right? And again, no spoilers because I know exactly what I want to reference. But let's talk about this, right? We know of
there's
two
line here, so we should get back to that when you're done with that. We should get back to that line.
Which line?
I do not believe Alicent is capable of cold murder. That's an interesting point, but Crimson was in the middle of saying something. I just wanted to file that away for.
I'll cross my fingers and we'll get back to it. So we know of two long night solution scenarios, right? We know about the Last Hero, and we know about Azor Ahai, right? Azor Ahai, easy to talk about. It's a story of sacrifice, right? That is essentially what it's about, right? He commits an act of labor. It's not enough. He commits an act of bravery. It's not enough. He commits an act of sacrifice. It is enough, right? Mm-hmm. The Last Hero, which is we get through Bran, right? That's a story like he goes on a quest with his companions. He finds the children of the forest. He learns secrets from them. That's a story about, like I said, companionship, humility, seeking knowledge from things that might be your enemy. That's humility, right? There's, risk taking involved there. There's these stories reflect themes about virtue, sacrifice, things like that. That's how you defeat the evil ice demons, and they are evil ice demons. Okay, that's the opposite of what the Targaryens do. If we take the logic that Aegon is trying to create a polity to resist the others, or the White Walkers, right? It is not that you tyrannize a continent and place yourselves as god kings over it, using your fire-breathing flying lizards. That's not how you solve the apocalypse. You don't seek temporal power to stave off the apocalypse. This is why people who talk about how like Tywin Lannister would solve the White Walkers don't know what the fuck they're talking about. I'm apologies for swearing. But that's that's the issue here, right? Don't get me wrong. Like Aegon having the dream and like thinking incorrectly about how to solve the problem is fine. The storytellers or the showrunners, or however you want to phrase it, using that to justify the bad parts of the Targaryen dynasty is unconscionable, to put it mildly.
What would be more interesting would be if the Targaryens did fulfill a prophecy, but not in the way that they had in mind. Like, for example, as some people think, if Daenerys dies in some kind of self-sacrifice thing, and that's their contract, that's the Targaryen contribution. That would be cool.
Like to put it sort of simply, right? Like, in order for in order for Daenerys to not end up like she does in the show, right? She has to renounce, and I believe she is morally capable of doing this. She has to renounce her political objectives, or she has to at least radically rethink them. Because in their current form, she is just a justification of the tyranny of Ares. She's just trying to reinstate that. She has to renounce that position, and I think she can. I don't think she can't. I don't think she's like this horribly evil person. But that's what she has to do. She has to abandon her political ambition. And I would argue that that is the course for her character, because she is meant to fight the White Walkers. Right? Like, that's sort of where she lies. Because otherwise, her position is that the people who oppose me are like ontologically evil, and I'm justified in doing anything to them, even though the Robert's Rebellion was, again, a completely just war.
Yeah, because Aerys Targaryen was psychotic.
And tyrannical.
And that too.
Yes.
And there are theories that Tywin Lannister is responsible partially for the Mad King going nuts by setting up Duskendale.
Yeah, that like Tywin Lannister, like the order established after the rebellion, right? Is, first of all, it's just marred by the fact that all human order is inherently imperfect, right? Like, obviously, right? And then they don't help that by like instantiating the scumbag that is Tywin Lannister in the system, right? In the form of his daughter, obviously.
And basically just indebting the realm to him by massive amounts.
Yeah, there's the debt. There's the like material reality of just the fact that he's, that, like, in the debt thing, and the fact that, you don't want people like that in power. You don't want people like that in power.
Mm-hmm. He's also a mass murderer. That's also another problem. He's very petty as well.
Twice over, or 3 times over.
And he murders children, or at least is indirectly responsible for murdering children. Well, I think, no, he's responsible for murdering children.
He's effectively responsible, by his own words, so to say. Right? Like, this is an interesting thing. Like, people talk about, like one of the more interesting parallels in the series is the Stannis Tywin parallel, right? It's often like, and one of the things I think it really comes up is how Stannis treats Edric, right? Like, people like I have to ask if people are reading the same goddamn book whenever they talk about how Stannis wants to burn Edric, because it's like are you reading the story? Like, Stannis only even let's take this from the top, because I love talking about Stannis. I apologize. This is a field. Let's. I know that Count. I know that's not your own name. I'm going to say it. I know he had a point about the show. Like, there was a line he wanted to dissect.
There was only. Yeah. We do want to go back to that because that's an interesting tangent. So we'll go back to that. So we'll keep that tangent in mind, even though it's a tangent. It's an interesting one.
Yeah, no problem.
So it was just that Rhaenyra was saying, I do not believe Alicent capable of cold murder. And
Daemon says
Daemon, at the very least, is responsible for cold murder in this episode, and possibly Rhaenyra too. And this is like, this whole thing is my biggest problem. The whole Laenor problem. There's like so many problems with it. like, because you're condemning the family, Leonor's family, to mourn him even though he's not dead. There's a, not to spoil anything, but there's a sea smoke problem.
That's
And
not a spoiler. That's just fact.
Yeah, like there's like Laenor being alive. Okay, I will say this. Okay, there is room for Daemon to actually kill him later behind Rhaenyra's back. Right? They could pull that.
Mhm.
Because like people have pointed out rightly that if Daemon Daemon could have killed him, right? But then that makes Rhaenyra kind of look like an idiot if she either A, doesn't figure out, or B, she looks like a total scumbag if she like condones it. And I agree with that. I think it would be too much for her to like endorse the killing of Laenor at this point, or be too stupid to figure out what happened, right? But if Daemon kills him later in the story, then we have something.
yeah, I mean, not to mention, some people have what's the word I'm looking for? When you try to make a point less important than it really is. Dismiss. Sorry?
Oh, you make a point less important. Downplayed.
Downplay, yes. Downplayed, like, the guard, or dismissed, like, the guard getting killed, and like, well, he's not the Lord. I mean, he's not Laenor, so hey, you know,
Who cares?
just fine. I mean, but no, it's worse actually.
It is worse.
Yeah, if anything, it's worse because this guy had nothing to do with anything. He was just there. He might be a really good shot for all we know. He might be horrible, but he's, as far as these people are concerned, he's innocent. So maybe they'll explain later that Rhaenyra didn't know about it. It was just Daemon all along. Maybe they'll explain that in the next episode or something. I don't know. But that's just the black bias talking. So who knows?
You know, like I think that there should be room for Rhaenyra to in order for there to be room for Rhaenyra to get worse, she has to be not worse, right?
Right.
She has to
Yes.
be, you know, it's okay that she's like again, like it's okay that she's not literally Hitler. Like I am like the biggest critic of her faction as you can imagine, and I don't think she's like evil. I don't blame her for wanting the throne. I mean, it's kick-ass to be the king or the queen. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But like,
Yeah.
you know,
And it's the obvious way to go. I mean, Viserys made her heir, and she's like, okay. Well, at first she resented it because he only did it to spite Daemon. She was thinking earlier, but now she's like accepted it, and you know you do sort of go with it. If someone makes you the heir, then you're the heir.
Yeah.
So I would rather not have her involved in cold murder at this point either.
no, I'm even against Daemon killing. Like, I think Daemon should have killed Laenor. Like, I'm just gonna say that straight up. I understand, like, if you need to like make it so that Rhaenyra not be stupid, that's fine. I get that logic, right? But him killing Rhea was, my opinion, like a huge mistake. Like I think I even wrote this. Like the condemning thing in his interactions, like I know they made Rhea like a tomboy, right? Like sort of, right? And to me, that's kind of like just that's kind of a mistake to me, because to me it would have been much interesting. This is going to sound oxymoronic. If Rhea was just like this incredibly normal, boring person, like yeah, okay, she likes to hunt. She's like a normal noble, right? She's just like a normal, boring person, right? And Daemon can't stand that because Daemon can't stand normality because he thinks he's too good for it, and that should be the condemning thing in that relationship. That he's not content to just be normal.
He needs to be the Overmensch.
Exactly. Yes, that's
Okay,
exactly.
so Rhea, we're talking about Rhea now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Ray Royce.
Okay, yeah. I mean, although I did like the character for the 2 minutes that she existed, but yeah,
No, yeah, you can do the tomboy thing, but the point I was making is more that like she should have just been like not submissive. I want to stress that, not stupid either. In fact, the thing about her that should have been interesting was that she knows that Damon's a fuck, and that she doesn't tolerate it, and that's another reason why he hates her, because he doesn't like it when people. He doesn't like the fact that people. He doesn't like her not liking him for the right reasons, right? Because he can pretend that like Otto hates him for all the wrong reasons. Otto hates him because Otto's a scumbag, even though Otto is totally correct to hate Damon, right? Otto hates me because Otto's also an ambitious fuck, but Rhea just hates me out of principle, and that I can't stand. And that's condemning on him. That's condemning of him.
Interesting. Yeah.
He doesn't need to murder her to have that point come across. Like that, like her dying is just like a moment of spectacular bad luck for everybody, right? So that should have just been an accident. And it can just be an accident because terrible things happen sometimes.
Yeah, like Balon the Brave just dies apparently of an appendix burst.
Yes. And nothing else. Maester's in the corner. No, I'm kidding. I'm not one of those. I really am not one of those guys. It's just
Oh, Dragon Demands loathes the Grand Maester conspiracy. He hates it.
it's just like missing. It's like to me, it's missing. It's missing the forest or the trees or however you want to phrase that. Because it's like the point isn't that there's like this concerted conspiracy to like destroy magic in the world. It's that the inherent biases of the learned class filter out alternatives to their viewpoint.
Yeah, that's more interesting. This is something that's been annoying me lately. The Maesters thing, the Maesters conspiracy. Nobody ever asks. Everyone is like, "Is there a Maester conspiracy?" No one's like, "Would it be good world building or good writing if there were?" And you can tell if you just replace Maesters with Illuminati or Masons or whatever, you can tell right off. That's probably not going to be very good. In terms of world building, it's really bad. Like consider conspiracy over centuries. The learned class do not necessarily agree that easily.
No, they don't, right? And like the thing is like a conspiracy, right? Like doesn't need every member of it to be like this totally active participant. They just need to have like the ideology like embedded, for lack of a better term, embedded within them. And they kind of just carry forth the program. But that doesn't mean that everyone's willfully acting toward like this like what the Massacre of the Dragons and the destruction of magic. That's just pointless. Like I said, the point is that their viewpoint filters out the magic. Right? And also, like I agree, like also like it's just like what the fuck is gonna like how like we can like man like I don't know why the Winds of Winter isn't out, but if it's because everyone is correct that there are actually all these fucking insane plot lines going on, I don't know how he's ever gonna finish.
No, that will never happen.
Like honestly, I am not a huge fan of like how Maester Marwyn just comes in at the end of book 4 or whatever. I think that's his name. And like he and Sam are gonna go to Essos. Like there's no way. There's no way. Like to me, as far as I'm concerned, Sam is gonna be the viewpoint character for Euron somehow. He's gonna be the one on the ground dealing with that because Aeron's gonna bite it probably. Right, so that's going to be our viewpoint into Euron. He's never going to go east. Marwyn the Mage is not going to make it out of Old Town. Even like the High Towers, right? Like I have nothing against the High Towers because they're fictional, but like in the actual main series, they're like hyped up red shirts. Like people are acting like, oh, they're going to beat Euron and he's a nothing. Like, are you kidding me? Like what's going? Like how?
The Maesters, in terms of the Maesters, the Citadel's already kind of bad world building because you've got like one university in all Westeros.
Yeah.
It's been in existence for thousands of years. There have been several separate kingdoms all this time. Why would these separate kingdoms?
It's like the ass end of the continent.
Yeah, why would these other kingdoms not have developed their own citadels? Because that's what happened in the real world, in medieval Europe. So it's kind of bad world building already. And then if on top of that you've got this conspiracy where it's the Maesters, not a specific. If it's a specific faction of the Maesters, it's a specific time, then yeah, maybe. But even there, in terms of writing, you run up with the whole. How does that square with? The only thing worth writing about is the Hearting conflict itself. You're not writing about that when you're writing about a conspiracy, unless someone in the conspiracy has this conflict, like maybe Sam or somebody. But anyway, that's all a tangent. But that's been. I just needed to get that out there because it's been annoying me.
I mean, I agree with you.
Yeah, that seems fair. I actually need to pop off now. I got work very early in the morning, exactly. So I'll just pop off now.
Okay, have a riot.
All right, take care, guys.
And see you. And Becca is in the chat. Brightness Becca's in the chat.
Yeah, we're still live. Yeah, I think with the Grand Maester conspiracy, I think it's flowing from the George has left a lot of things way too ambiguous, like the cat's paw who sent him.
That's...
Since it does not make any logistical sense for Joffrey to do it.
No, like honestly, like that's one of those ones where it's like I can buy it as Littlefinger, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can't, like I'm fine with that. Like Littlefinger is kind of a weird guy to like kind of wrap anyone's head around, right? Because he's a little like he's both like too good and he's both not as good as people think he is, and he's also much better than people think he is, right? At what he does.
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment of Littlefinger.
Don't hire us. Oh, sorry. Anything with Valerian in it is instantly a cool scene just by virtue of having Valerian in it.
What was the line? She's like this. She's this crusty barnacle.
Crusty old grandma.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Man, like so, the man doesn't have an arm, right?
Nope.
The man is sans an arm, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Honestly, like I understand making things obvious, making things for like I get it, but like in the books he was just fat and kind of and like becoming diabetic by the end of it. Like he didn't need to be like literally crumbling.
Yeah, what was it? He was. They had a whole list of ailments that he was undergoing towards the end. I just read them last night, but I don't remember them anymore. But they involved stomach stuff and God knows what. Oh, and difficulty breathing and all this other stuff.
Let me actually pull that up. That actually would probably be interesting. I wonder where that is.
Like my coworkers, like just love ripping on that. Like how is he still alive? How is my man still alive?
Well, he's been alive for the last. He lived for 10 years without the arm and whatnot.
He's the fucking Hekiazado of Westeros.
Yeah. So. Yeah, he removed 2 fingers, but that's it.
And that was later in the books than in the show. In the show, it's the first episode already. In the books, it's like significantly later.
What, him getting sick?
No, he's losing 2 fingers.
Oh yeah, yeah. That happens at the end where like he's diabetic, right? He becomes necrotic. That's all that is. Like, that's just what happens. Like here, he's like. I mean, look at the. I mean, like.
He looks like he drank out of the wrong grail.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. He's like fucking. He's fucking Sandmanning over there.
You can't be too careful when drinking from a grails.
Well, I'm referring to there's a specific meme in regards to Indiana Jones where a guy drinks out of the wrong grail.
Okay.
So,
Brightness says, I like the way they've done Viserys. I mean, I basically like the way they've characterized him, too. I think they've characterized him quite successfully in terms of his trying to get everyone to get along, and sometimes he's forceful, and sometimes he's not, and sometimes he tries to be forceful but totally fails, especially when Alicent is involved.
Right, like he's pathetic, right? Like that's actually the word to describe him.
But he's pathetic in an interesting way.
No, but like I mean that like pathetic implies like pathos, right? Like I think
he's weak and weak-bellied.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so pathetic in the actual.
Yeah.
Like
I don't mean that he's contemptible. Although you could argue that his weakness is contemptible, but he's actually like pathetic. Like he invokes pathos.
He invokes pity.
Exactly. He is pitiful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man. We can return to the Stannis point if unless wind down.
Well, I do want to talk. So, do you feel like there's more to talk about with the Laenor stuff? Because I'm just like, logistics of this whole thing just make my head hurt.
Oh, I mean, like we can rip into it.
I mean, my main concern isn't even the logistics; it's the underlying issues which I was talking about earlier. In terms of plot and characterization, and it makes people into absolute scum.
No, I like you were
that.
like you're completely. I am totally with you that people who like try to like downplay the fact that they murder a man for their own convenience is like
remarkably evil.
It's like so callous, right? It's so like there will be things that happen later where the Greens do plenty of bad stuff, right? But like it's I can't think of one off the top of my head that's really like this. And even in the books, right? The Blacks don't do something like this, unless you want to like if they do something like this, it's specifically Daemon acting on his own interests.
Yeah, Daemon does do something that is pretty bad, and that arguably is worse. Which
I would argue that I know what you're talking about. I know we all know what you're talking about. What Daemon does is the worst thing in this story. Okay, but
yeah, the blood and cheese incident to keep things vague.
Sure, rat catchers and city watchmen, right? But the issue there is that like that's still like a targeted, deliberate like
eye for an eye thing.
And I don't think it's justified at all. But let me be clear: it's not callous, right? It's like this is just so base and like so indifferent. Like Daemon, like let's put it like this, right? In Blood and Cheese, right? Daemon cares a lot about what's happening in that situation, right? Here, he doesn't give a shit about this guy. Like, who cares?
Yeah. Okay. Just a brief interruption. Whiteness Becca, he is also oddly optimistic, which makes him kind of refreshing. I mean, it's endearing, certainly.
Yes, that is also true. That's another word for it. He's endearing.
Yeah. I was like, Rainier, they're probs evil. Yeah. Yeah, I'd say the Rainier is a tad evil, yeah.
I mean, apart from possibly being complicit in that innocent random chap's death, I haven't seen anything evil from her yet.
Well, I think she's definitely not terribly competent.
But that's not the same as being evil. I mean, Viserys is very not terribly competent, and we don't call him evil.
Yeah.
Well, I think that she's not a good person. She's definitely not a heroic person. I do like her too, but I think that she is very much a bad person, and she has very few redeemable qualities as a human being.
Yeah, like this goes into what I was kind of talking about like way at the beginning, right? Like she doesn't, and again, like she's not a like philosopher or anything, right? But she doesn't have like this conception of the good that really like you could really look at and go, that's admirable, right?
Yeah,
Like Allison,
basically.
Allison is not great, but when Allison like is sitting there going like I'm going to be responsible to my family and my society, that's something.
Yeah, not very much. I mean, there's nobody here that has that really has any of those ideals. I mean, for that we have to go to people like Daenerys in the main series, or
Jon Snow.
possibly
I would argue
Jon Snow,
most of
possibly
the stars-
Duncan. Sorry?
Okay, so like I would argue most of the stars qualify for that. I would also argue Stannis really qualifies for that. I think like maybe I'm being misunderstood here, right? Maybe I'm misunderstood. Like let's take the most severe example in this story so far, which is Cole, right? Cole is not a great guy, right? But he's trying to live up to something. Now we can argue that something is wrong, and he's also being hypocritical about it, right? But he's got something that he's trying to like shoot towards.
He has an ideal that maybe he falls short of, but he at least believes in it to a certain extent.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Rhaenyra is like maybe she's interested in being a good mother, and I'm not saying that like you could say that. Like I think you could reasonably say that, and that's commendable on her part. But like, being a good parent, being a good mother, being a good parent is a big deal. Like it's a big deal. Like Tywin Lannister is a bad father, and it undoes everything that he worked for his whole life for. Right?
You were saying Valerian?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sir Kristen Cole, I'm not sure if I would say. I'm not so sure that he has this ideal and all that other stuff. Maybe he does. He seems like his main objection is to be vindictive, and we saw how he treated Rhaenyra's kids in the training yard. So I don't know about these ideals. If you really held those ideals, you'd be treating all the kids equally, for starters. I think he's mainly resentment seems to be his main motive. Maybe there's some ideal, I don't know.
I think with Cole, he wants to maintain a certain. I don't know if it's the ideal in terms of he wants to be an ideal person. It's that he wants to feel like he himself is an ideal person.
Right, that's like the nuance and flaw of his character, right? Like this is
pride.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's a hypocrite.
Yeah, he is a hypocrite. I agree with that.
Oh, and Allison's a kind of a rubbish mother, isn't she?
Yeah, she seems like she's pretty bad at her job.
I mean, I hate to say that, but kind of.
Allison's hard to get a read on because she is commendable in her struggle for her sons, 100%. I'll back her up on that. But so is Rhaenyra in a way, right?
Yeah.
The issue that she raised them. They're like so awful. Sort of. I mean, you can make the case that Aemon being the weapon that you point at the enemy is like what you want a second son to be. You can make that argument if you really wanted to, but he's also just kind of a bag of dicks.
Yeah, Helena seems to be harmless.
Sure.
Yeah, she's basically driven mad by dragon dreams, and her brain is not fully developed, it seems.
Yeah, she might be mentally challenged or something.
On the spectrum.
Yeah.
It does seem as though Helena and her kids, at least, like one of her kids is a lot of these symptoms that George describes as the daughter that she has very much falls under somebody who is very heavily on the spectrum.
Yeah, I seem to vaguely recall that.
Same with Vagon, the Maester of Jaehaerys's kids.
Yeah. Also, I think Becca brings up a good point about how Kristen is more focused on punishing those who breaks his ideals than living up to the ideals themselves. I think that's a good way of like describing the actual problem with the Greens in general. Like they're so frustrated with what's going on that they kind of just like lose the plot, so to say.
They're kind of hypocrites.
Yes, but in order to be a hypocrite, you have to actually be saying something that obviously it means saying something you don't think is true, but it also means that the thing that you're nominally in support of might actually be a good thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing that I've actually heard Dragon Demand say that Rhaenyra is kind of a female Stannis. Would you agree with that, or no? I personally do not agree with that. I think that she's a less evil version of Cersei.
That's closer, right? Like I mean, like people like there have been many. I've seen many Reddit comments. I like going on Reddit. I've seen many comments about how like it's very ironic, and it is like ironic in like the pure sense that like Stannis has the whole lead line where he criticizes Rhaenyra and denounces her as a traitor, right? When he's kind of in the exact same position, right? But like that completely misses the boat on what Stannis actually thinks, or at least claims he thinks as a character. Because Stannis, like what I said before, like there's some principle that's above the monarch, right? Like Stannis' entire conception of reality is that there's something above other human beings. In his case, it's instantiated in the law, right? Right, like
Yes.
He's nothing like Rhaenyra. He conceives of his entire life as responsibility.
Which is interesting because he might be an atheist.
This is
definitely. He's
yeah,
definitely
this is like
an atheist. He doesn't care about any gods.
exactly like this is sort of like almost like semantic, right? Like Stannis is an atheist the way like a deist is an atheist, almost. But like he makes right action, for lack of a better term, his god. Right? He makes responsibility his god. He's deontological toward his ideals, which essentially means he makes them god. Right? He subjects himself to something. And at that point, the distinction between atheist and theist is like non-existent. Like, what's even the point? Right?
Yeah.
Whereas, like someone like Tywin who acts like he isn't actually like. If Tywin believes in anything, it's that like he has to at least have like. It's that the sovereign has to be able to project, not even be, just project competence. Right? So Stannis is like, yes, he is an atheist in like the sense that like Westeros would understand atheism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think part of it was what God would take my parents from me.
Yeah, he struggles with the theodicy problem, which is like it's a very big deal. The theodicy problem is not a trivial. It's not a trivial philosophical matter in any way.
No. Yeah, it's difficult. It's tough, as Preston Jacobs would say. It's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think a while back, History of Westeros did an examination of Rhaenyra's character, and most of the parallels that they found between her and A Song of Ice and Fire character was Cersei. Most of her parallels in terms of her character, like having 3 illegitimate kids out of wedlock with a guy, and it makes it so that they don't look like their dad or supposed dad. Claiming a throne, that sort of thing. The retreating away from the castle, taking up residence in King's Landing.
No, like I know. I mean,
These,
yeah,
ahead.
Most of these similarities are only on the surface. If you dig even slightly deep, then you can see, for example, her bastards are still of royal blood. Cersei's aren't, for example. And what was the other one? I can't remember. There was another one that was, if you dug under the surface, it doesn't really. But
I mean, like you can make the case that like I know I made the crack earlier that Rhaenyra and Alicent are both like a combination of Cersei and Daenerys, but they're really more like Cersei, right? They're really more like Cersei.
They have no noble qualities in them.
No noble qualities. Well, there are. Well, they are, and especially Alicent. They're intelligent, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think Rhaenyra is dumb by any means either. So I don't think they're intelligent. Like to the meant that they're. I don't know if intelligence is exactly counts as a virtue, but they are intelligent. They're much like, again, like low bar to clear here, but like they are exponentially better parents than Cersei.
Yeah,
like
because that's the main difference between the two.
Even Alicent's a better parent than Cersei.
Yeah, I'm putting both of them in that category. They're both much better parents than Cersei. And again, like they're not great either, but like they're
because Cersei is a self-absorbed narcissist who only loves Joffrey,
and only as an extension of her self.
Cersei loves Cersei, therefore I am I.
Yeah, that's how that works. Like she loves Jaime as her like male form. Like it's really creepy.
Yeah, and Jaime has some of that too, to a lesser extent. Yeah.
I don't know. I think Jaime's feelings for Cersei are disgusting for many reasons, but they are mostly sincere, right? Like he doesn't want to be Cersei, right?
And
wants
he's also willing to sacrifice for Cersei.
Yeah, I mean, like he actually conceives of their relationship. This is disgusting. He actually conceives of their relationship like in romantic terms. He actually does. Again, this is for a given definition of love. He actually does love her, right? Like in a way. He actually does care about her. In a way, like if you truly love someone, you would want what's best for them, and what's best for them is not to be in this disgusting incestuous relationship. But she does love him. I mean, he does love her.
Yeah. However, I do suspect there's an element of narcissism with him too. Just
he has that like he has the Tywin Lannister infused inherent Lannister superiority complex, unquestionably. This is there are no men like me. There is only me line, right?
Yeah.
But he doesn't like he part of his love for Cersei is that only she can be good enough for him, right? She's the only one worthy of being good enough for me. That's part of where it comes from. That's why like in his like you'll notice that like he never seems to notice other women at all. Like his only like there's Brienne, but that's because he's so like compelled. He's so drawn to her virtue more than anything else. But he's not like tempted. He's not tempted sexually by other women.
Yeah.
Which is really weird.
Is it really weird? I mean, like,
yeah.
Which
is quite wrong, I guess, morally speaking.
It's you mean it's wrong? What do you think? I'm sorry. What are you talking about? Because I thought you said
that he's attracted to his sister. That he's attracted to his sister because she's the only one good enough for him.
His twin sister, incidentally.
Yeah. Well, it's incredibly. It's an like for lack of a better term, it's like an evil way to think about love, right? Right. It's not a very like wholesome way to think about love. Forget the fact that they're incestuous, right? Just imagine they weren't brother and sister, right?
liking someone because you think they're the only one good enough for you is a little twisted, right? Whereas, you know, Cersei, like Cersei doesn't even think Jaime's good enough for her, right? Like, because her love for him isn't even about that.
Yeah, she thinks Rhaegar Targaryen should have been. And
Yeah, like this is another thing, like where, like, man, if you want to go off about Cersei, so like people talk about how like Robert wasn't like the best husband, and that's true. It's true that Robert wasn't the best husband, but like, here's the thing: Cersei still wanted to be the queen. She wanted everything that came with the position. You know, she just wasn't willing to like give up the cooch for it.
yeah, she also was very particular in saying no. I aborted Robert's spawn,
Yeah,
and she's
like
very happy about that.
yeah, like I mean that's a whole nother level of just like she talks about like literally eating his children, which is like fucking Saturn devouring his son's level shit.
What, did she actually literally eat them?
No, I think she said she thinks of it in metaphorical terms. I killed all your
Yeah.
I ate all your children and licked them off my fingers.
Yeah, when she talks about how she would bring him to orgasm with her mouth, right? And she equates that to eating his kids. Right?
Oh, okay.
You know. But again, like we can imagine, like we don't have to like be super literal. Like we can take her. Actually, we can be super literal about it. We can understand that like she's not just saying I sucked them off. Like she's saying like I'm devouring your children, and she actually thinks in those terms. Right. This is the extent to which she wants to hurt Robert. Right. It's not enough that she's.
There's also the fact that she ordered his children killed.
Yeah, like just in case we're thinking that she's only going to stop in the realm of the metaphorical. She's actually like perfectly fine with murdering, children. But no, I think that like Rhaenyra is. Again, like I said, like Rhaenyra is in some ways a better version of Cersei. I don't just mean in terms of she's a better person, because she is, even though that's not a huge bar to clear. But her situation is just more interesting. Like this is why I brought up like all that stuff I brought up about at the beginning, right? About how like it's important for the monarch to conceive of themselves as subject to some sort of higher principle, like because if that doesn't happen, it doesn't matter how good someone like Rhaenyra may be, and the fact that Rhaenyra isn't all that great to begin with is non sequitur. I don't care that Rhaenyra and Daemon are awful, and again, Daemon is much more awful than she is. It's that there's like an underlying danger to this story about what's going on. And the like you could, if I was really wanting to like sort of downplay the situation, so I would say that like the problem is that like you could actually let me like this, right? You could say that the blacks are heroic people who under their surface their cause is like so fundamentally corrupt that they're a danger, right? Whereas the greens are like these really shitty evil people, but underneath their cause is something that's at least somewhat respectable, that it's at least workable in a social in a social sense.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of like I don't want us to just do that, because like the greens are really bad. Like Aegon II is not a good king.
Yeah, he's like a worse version of Robert.
Yeah, that's fair. That's close. I mean, like I think that's especially fair because he's very personally brave. Like he's physically brave, right? Like he shows what we would call battlefield courage. Not to spoil anything.
Yeah, he's brave, he isn't very accomplished, though.
No,
Oh, Aegon the second? Is he particularly brave? I mean, doesn't he hide out on? Oh, that's a spoiler. Sorry, but anyway, I don't know
okay,
how
yeah.
he's very brave.
He does when he is engaged physically. He doesn't run and hide. Right? He does put his body on the line. Or at least he's willing to put his body on the line. That is fair about him. That's a fair statement about him.
Yeah, I don't remember that about Aegon. I remember that about Aemond.
Rook's
mean-
Rest. Not
Yeah,
so well, but Rook's Rest.
I'll have to. Well, I'm in the process of rereading it, but I haven't got to that bit yet.
Like, even if it's not I'm not saying it's like the most heroic thing ever he does or anything. I'm not trying to say that, but he is willing to, as the sovereign, as the instantiation of the hegemony of force, right? He is willing to instantiate it himself and put his physical body on the line in combat. I'm not saying like that's inherently the most greatest thing ever, because Richard III also did that. But it's nothing that should be denigrated. Let's put it like that.
Robert also does, though.
Well, he does. Like, Robert's also just a much better. Robert's better in like every way. Like, Robert is like I mentioned, like, the Anarchy, right? The Anarchy is the story this is based off of, right? Like, I think that kind of analysis is always a little like trite, like making one-to-one comparisons. But in this case, like, if you read about the Anarchy or watch anything about the Anarchy, King Stephen, the guy who's like the Aegon parallel, is like, he's like, comparing it to Aegon is like such an immense disservice, because you read the story and like Stephen just comes across as like kind of like just this like Chad, like he's like personally leading siege assaults. He's like he gets captured at one point, and it's because he refuses to abandon the field of battle, because like his father abandoned the First Crusade and he wouldn't like leave. He would never flee from a battle because of that, and also because like the people in the town like called him to save them, so he wouldn't abandon them. It's actually really cool. And like also like, the other thing I'm really interesting thing about the Anarchy, like there's a bit in the Anarchy where he has Matilda besieged in a castle, and it's like for many reasons it's a little dicey, because she's kind of like, it's not like open war, but it kind of is, and like it's not a hostile location, so like, and what he does is he goes, like, he's like, look, I'll just escort you to your supporters, and that way we could just go fight over there. And he does it. He actually like escorts her back to her supporters, and like he just does that. Like, if anything, like there's a point where, like I said, Stephen is captured by Matilda, and like she doesn't like murder him or kill him or anything like that. He just holds her. She just holds, like, obviously there's logic to this. You know, she just holds him prisoner for many reasons. But like if anything, like the interesting thing about the Anarchy is how like nice the two like is how nice Matilda and Stephen kind of are. Like, the worst thing that comes across is that like Matilda's like a little abrasive, and Stephen's like a bit of a screw up in some places. But like they're like complete upgrades as human beings of these people.
Interesting. Yep, I don't know very much about them.
I mean, there's a really good, if you just type in like the Anarchy, there's this really good, like, you know, like this guy made like a whole like 10-part series or whatever, and he condensed into one like 2-hour, you know, thing. And it's just like, it's really funny because he has everyone, like, it's really good. It's informative. It covers everything. It's great. And it's also really funny because he has like everyone, like, he just has like the little circles representing them. Like, you know, he has their portraits, right? And so as he's describing it, he'll have like little speech bubbles coming out. And like, it's just fucking jokes. And it's the funniest thing ever. Like, I find it funny. Okay. I don't know if it's the funniest thing ever, but I enjoyed it a lot. It's made by, actually, I could probably find it. It's a guy called Embrace Historia. That's who it is.
Hmm.
And I highly recommend it. It's 2:09. It's 2 hours 9 minutes. It's good. It's funny. It's informative. It's interesting. It's interesting. You know.
Let's see.
I can put it into the Discord if you know.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. Here, you want general or
Just whichever.
okay,
You
sure.
could put it in House of the Dragon.
Yeah, why not? That's fair. That's fair.
Any other thoughts? This has been a fantastic discussion. I liked it. Thank you, Crimson Scorpio, for very much elevating the discussion. I like hearing political philosophy stuff.
Well, thanks. If you ever want me, like, I don't know, I'm not always around, but if you ever, like, you know, want to shoot me, if you ever want me to come on or whatever,
okay,
I'll do that, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main points I was going to bring up, I mean, there are all sorts of, we could mention all sorts of other things, like how cool the Dragonflight thing was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was pretty epic. It was like, that is definitely a scene that I've been looking forward to seeing adapted. And it's kind of like, well, part of it is I didn't expect them to. It's other than, like, it's kind of a contrast with Wheel of Time, where I'm looking at Wheel of Time and looking at the books, and I'm just like, okay, how are you going to ruin this scene if you get to this before the show is canceled? That's my perspective on it, as opposed to, oh, I'm excited to see how they do the scene. It's just like, oh, how are they going to ruin this scene? It's undoubtedly Wheel of Time Season 2 is going to be even worse than Season 1, because, unfortunately, people gave it decently positive feedback, and Rafe Judkins is a turd who's going to keep going as he's going, because he's also a narcissist. Anyway, moving back to something that's actually good, I'm excited to see what they do in the next episode. I'm also interested in seeing Osric from the Last Kingdom, the just meek monk, play a psychopath. I'm just like, okay, I'm interested to see that.
Who?
He's you've never watched The Last Kingdom, so this is mainly just for me.
I've seen like the first three. I've seen like the first 3 seasons. I'm trying to remember who you're talking. I know you're talking about Aemond.
But who's
Yeah.
he playing?
Osric.
Aemond? Is he playing? Oh, Aemond is like the. This is adult Aemond then.
Yep, adult Aemond is played by a guy who's most famous for playing a meek monk in the Last Kingdom TV show, which is my favorite TV show of all time, bar none.
Really?
High
praise.
Yeah.
Actually act.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how he, from the little I've seen of it, he definitely, like, just a wit, like, all he needs is a wig, and he's a completely different person. A wig and an eye patch.
This will be the final form of the cast, essentially.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting.
Yeah. Because after this, it's meant to go more or less. With no more time skips. That's what they say anyway.
Yeah, I mean, they'll introduce more characters, obviously. I mean, hopefully.
Oh yeah, they'll have to.
They have to.
And honestly, if they'll put Black Alley and Sabetha Frey in there, if only to meet their LGBTQ quota.
Yeah, I mean, like, do we want to like briefly touch on the idea that the reason they didn't kill Laenor was because of like
the bury your gays complaint?
Yeah, they don't want to. They want to be woke friendly. Let's say.
Well, I think that just bury your gays is just a stupid trope that people should just get over, and people should just write better.
I mean, I'm not against these things. Like, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you. Like,
I think that if they take offense at it, that's frustrating, and it doesn't help the situation.
I mean, I've not. I've not. I guess I've not watched very many shows, serious shows or films with gay characters, so don't know if this how legitimate this complaint is. I know that in some cases they were talking about people who are coded gay, and I don't know if I don't know if that's wrong, but I'm a little bit dubious.
Since if something is just coded gay, and it's just like, if it's just simple coding, it's based on an interpretation on your end. Unless it is stated by the director, then it's just an inference on your part. In terms of the bury your gays, it's basically because it's built on the premise that people are stupid, that writers are stupid when it comes to writing gay people, not that they either write them as evil or they write them as saints, and there's nothing in between.
Yeah, that was what Preston Jacobs was talking about it.
Mm-hmm. So for me, I'm just like, just don't get up in arms about it. It's a freaking TV show, and for me, it's just like
I do think that. I mean, like, I agree. It's like, this is like, I probably shouldn't have brought it up because I find it probably, I might find it more frustrating than you do, but like, I do think they have like, to me, they have room to course correct on what they did in this episode. They do.
I think for me, I am just saying writers should not let that affect their creative process.
Oh yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, for the story, Lanor has to get out of their way one way or the other. It's just the way the story goes.
I mean, just because like it, like the whole like the sea smoke thing, right? Like it kind of mattered. Like the whole like the dragons have a rider thing. Like, again, no spoilers. Like that matters. Like later in the story in a big way. Like you can't just like ignore it and then have it come back.
Mm-hmm. Especially since you're not going to have a 40-year-old man claim to be a 20-year-old man.
That would be a little awkward.
It'd be okay. Like, obviously, this would be bad, but it would be kind of really hilarious if like that is exactly what happened, and they all like everyone like knew, but they all just kind of looked the other way
because they were just so happy to have their son back in Rhaenys and Corlys's case.
Yeah, and the fact that like, you know, like they need a dragon rider.
And then he ends up but then it doesn't make what happens later make sense because
no, I agree.
Yeah, with the
the trick is he's the other guy, actually.
Yeah, spoiler, but the guard they killed, he comes back as a white and he kills them all. And then he sits the Iron Throne.
Yeah, I was thinking of the Battle of Tumbleton.
Oh no, you know, okay. This is okay. I'll say. I know it's okay. Obviously, we know about Tumbleton, but there is one way that could also make this really come back in a cool way, right? Like that. So we know what Larys. It's not a spoiler to say that Larys does something, right? This is a spoiler. We know what Larys does that's really, really big for the Greens. Okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
This guy, this guard that they killed, this no-name, his relatives help Larys. I mean, it would make it better, right? Like it would at least make it somewhat karmic, right?
His relatives kill Larys, is that what you just said?
And I'm trying not to spoil here, man. I'm trying not to spoil.
Larys gets help from this guy's relatives.
Oh, okay. He helps. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying it.
Okay, so they would join they would. Oh, maybe they help. Something happen later. I know. I think I might know what you're thinking of. Something that will affect the denouement.
The word of the day is tangle.
Yeah, something that affects the denouement towards the end of the dance might be facilitated by this chap's relatives.
I mean, it would be a nice way of tying it together, right? Like it, like you know.
Yeah, I don't think they'll do that, but that would be.
I don't think they will either. I don't think, like, forgive me, but I don't know if they're that smart.
Yeah.
Like, this is a cool idea. It's just they could justify this poor sap, right? They could give some meaning to this guy. I mean, this poor guy, like my God, like
Yeah.
he's just like he doesn't even die as himself. Like this is like gross.
Yeah, and what do his family think about all this?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what are you going to tell them?
Get wrecked, nerd. Get sucks to suck, peasant.
He disappeared. He is now dead. He's
died
kicked the bucket.
Maybe he died defending Leonor, but they both died.
Yeah.
He died for your Lord's son.
He died for your true queen.
Yeah, something inspiring like that. Maybe they'll tell. I don't even know. We don't know anything about this chap's family either.
This is an inspiring moment in the story.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, very.
Oh yeah, like
non-spoiling is working. I don't have a flying clue what you're saying. Good.
Yeah, I'm being really. Yeah, that's good. That means I'm pulling it off.
That's good.
That means you pulled it off about what happens later at Dragonstone.
They do a thing. They do. I didn't even mention the island.
Someone does something on Dragonstone later on, which
is a big deal.
Which will affect the outcome of the war.
Just stunt on him.
And it's because someone did something earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Because things happened, and then other things happened as a result of those things.
Man, it's amazing how much like is carried by what happens. Why do we take? This is like I hate doing this because this is like a stupid like complaint, but like why take the hood off at the beach? Why? Why do that? For dramatic effect.
Odd.
It's just dramatic. Like they have spyglasses.
He actually does look better with better bald than he did with the wig.
Yeah, most people look better without wigs. This is me being like pretentious. Don't worry about it.
I was actually thinking that Emma Darcy actually looks better in a wig.
That's probably true.
Emma yeah. There,
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, the bald look is also just like you could the shaved look is very easy to look good.
Yeah. Rainier is not supposed to be a chap anyway, so she's meant to have proper,
head of hair.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Emma Darcy cuts her hair very, very close to her scalp.
Yeah.
Which I imagine is much, much nicer for the wig and is probably more comfortable.
Oh, yeah.
It's actually a funny story that she was doing her audition via Skype, and so they had to ask, hey, can you do you have time to get a wig? So she just kind of made a wig since they couldn't go to a store. Alrighty. Well, everybody, thank you all for coming. This has been our coverage of House of the Dragon episode 7. The second to last episode of Rings of Power Season 1 is coming out tomorrow, but we won't be doing our watch party until Saturday. and I'm trying to fight through the copyright stuff. I'm going to have to do some jiggery pokery with the editing in order to try and make it so that we can get this our coverage to you.
What time on Saturday?
It would be probably fairly late.
Yeah. That might be awkward.
Probably sometime around like 8:30ish, because 8:15, 8:30, since that's about the time I get at home from work due to the timing on the train system and when I get off from work.
Is that mountain time?
Yep.
Okay, we might. Okay, I may or may not. I might make it. I might make it, or I might make a report of it or something. We'll see.
Oh, it's a bad show. You're probably not missing anything.
No. But, there's duty and sacrifice and all that. Well,
yeah. Alrighty. Well, we'll call it good for today. Thank you all for coming, and we will see you next time.